I'm not starting over. On a Motorola console radio that was Granddaddy's first purchase of anything electric and that my father still owns and cherishes, and that I now have. The children crowded around the fireplace as grandmother made popcorn balls by heating homemade molasses over the flames and combining it with freshly popped popcorn. As the evening grew late, my father, his siblings, and his cousins would stand as close to the fire as they could before racing back to their unheated beds. The slowest children often ended up sleeping sideways at the foot of the bed, relying on grandmother's hand-stitched quilts and heated bricks wrapped in old blankets to secure their toes from the night's chill. As my father described his memories of that 1943 Thanksgiving, I was amazed that in one lifetime he had seen such remarkable change. I also found myself grimacing at the sheer labor it took to provide for a family and run a farm without running water or modern conveniences. Yet my father's face did not show relief that the difficulties of those days were over. Instead, I noticed a prevalent smile in his voice, a smile that came from remembering a simpler time, when a static-filled radio broadcast and a sweet potato pie were all that were needed to fill a family's heart with gratitude. Why do we like stories like that? Takes us on a trip. It's going through life. That was just a generation ago. Bring back memories for many. Right? Just a generation. I'd just like you to think about something. How good we have it today. How many of you took a shower this morning? I haven't. I've been driving all the night, so I often said it. But the reason I say that, do you realize that it wasn't until 50 years ago that showers were available? So those of you who took a shower this morning just experienced more luxury than the majority of the world's population throughout history ever has. Just the simple thing of a shower. Now, we like these things because it's a simpler time, they were more gratitude, they were grateful, etc. But I'd like you to think about something. You were probably taught, and I'm going to get in trouble with the teachers here, you were probably taught by your teachers in school that we won World War II because we outmanufactured the Nazis. I have a distant relative who taught at the War College and the Air Force Academy as a historian, and he argues we won World War II because of the Depression. And the reason was, after everybody go through the Depression, at the first part of the war in World War II, we were getting beat all over the place. We were just losing everywhere. So what kept morale up? Because for the people who had just gone through 10 years of the Depression, it's like, I'm being fed 3 times a day. It's better than I had it. Okay? In other words, just like the story, the difficult times allowed them to handle even worse times. They were grateful because they didn't have everything. I point that out for something. We live in a time of incredible luxury. And we live in a time when, good grief, like I said, I still have that electrical box. I still have that radio. How many lights do you have in your house? And it's now Thanksgiving is over, right? So you're unloading all the Christmas boxes. How many Christmas lights are you going to hang outside? And Gretchen's not here, so I can state this, because we're going to have our annual fight where I have to hang up all the Christmas lights outside. And then when Christmas is over, and I say, why can't we just leave them there? And she says, no. But then she says, I want you to hang these lights because we can leave those outside all day, all year long. And I'm like, why? Well, these are outdoor lights. All right, women, who makes these rules? Okay? Who makes these rules? But anyway, think about all the lights, the electrical stuff, everything that's out there we don't think twice about. We'll complain about electricity prices being high, but we have all that stuff, okay? We have so much things that sometimes it's hard for us to depend on anything else. Jesus said, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to get into heaven. Why? Because when we've got everything, I don't need God. Throughout history, as living standards have gone up in a nation, what's happened to church attendance? What's been happening in church attendance in the United States? Okay? But our living standards are going up. So what I'd like you to do, because we have 3 lessons here in December, and of course, it's around Christmas. I want you to think about something differently. Theologically, the biggest Christian holiday is Easter. Why? Because Jesus rose. If Jesus didn't rise from the dead, we have absolutely no reason to be here, okay? And as the Apostle Paul said, if he didn't rise from the dead, we above all people are just messed up, okay? But what has happened? Practically, culturally, what's the biggest Christian holiday? Christmas. For lots of reasons, okay? Part of it's the gifts and all that stuff and everything, and part of it is the baby Jesus, he's not threatening, okay? But I want you to think about what the baby Jesus represented. Because it's why I want you to be thinking for the next couple weeks. I want you to focus on what you don't have. I want you to focus on your weakness. Anybody during Thanksgiving or while you were after Thanksgiving and, our better halves said, you need to get the boxes down for Christmas, okay? Did you start unloading boxes and pull your back out? Did anybody reach for something and go, oh, wait a second? Did you try and balance everything and go, wait, why am I wobbly? I know, that for the youngsters of us all here in this class, okay, we're getting older. And getting older means we can't do all the things we used to do. And most of us look at that as the phrase, youth is wasted on the young. But I'd like you to think about something different. A couple weeks ago, my friend Daryl and his wife came in, and you saw him. And I've used Daryl as an example for years now, okay? And remember, I always use Daryl as an example for Samson, because every time you look at the books and everything, and they're doing the Samson stories, what does Samson look like? He's a big, mostly balding guy and all this stuff and everything. And I totally believe Samson did not look like that. I think he looked like me, okay? The reason is because Daryl, if you remember, Daryl and I did our black belt training together, and he went on and got 2 other black belts and 2 other disciplines, and he's a 3rd degree, a 5th degree, and a 4th degree. And he's always been a beast. I mean, he's huge, and he's a beast. And when we were doing our black belt training together, I watched him break a guy's ribs through the punching bag. He wasn't angry. He was just practicing. I mean, he's always been a beast. About 10 years ago, he broke the world shrug record at 950 pounds. Okay? He's a nurse anesthetist, and during COVID, he volunteered to go to Cedars-Sinai in New York City, which was the most slammed hospital with COVID, and work there. And I would call him at night, and I still remember the one night, I'm like, how's it going? He's like, oh, it's better. I only lost 15 today. And I go, what? Yeah, only 15 patients died on me today, so it's getting better. He was just a beast. 2 weeks ago, he works at a clinic here. His wife drove him to the clinic. He got out of the car and he said, I'm just feeling a little woozy. She says, well, get something to drink when you get in there. He walked in through the clinic doors and collapsed, had a heart attack. The only reason he's alive is he just walked into a medical clinic. But they had to, he flatlined twice. They had to shock him twice. CPR, it'll break all the ribs on you. So he's in the hospital. He recovered from that. That's fine. Goes back home. He's okay. But he gets an infection. And the infection settles in his heart and the heart valves. So last week, he calls me. Gretchen and I went in. He looked horrible. And he was given a 6% chance to live. He made it. Okay? And it started responding to the antibiotic cocktail, and now they're giving him 3 weeks. And if it clears, he'll be able to have the surgery on a heart valve. It'd still be risky, but they're like, now he's got a shot at this. Daryl's 55. In visiting with Daryl now, he's in pain. All his ribs are cracked. got this infection raging, and they aren't giving him pain medication because this stuff has affected his kidneys and liver. And his renal functions have to be stable to be able to clear this stuff out and have the heart surgery. So he's in more pain than he's ever been in his life. He's 55 years old, and for the first time in his life, he's weak. And he's struggling to deal with it. And I can share this with you because we've been talking about it. He's like, God kept me alive for a reason. But part of what he's having to grapple with is for the first time in his life, he can't attack something and overcome it. He's weak. He can't get out of bed. He knows the odds are stacked against him. So if you were in that position, what would you do? Pray. Yeah, that's exactly right. Okay? Go back and look at the Old Testament. What's the repeating story? The Israelites are struggling. We're in slavery. God, help us. God comes in. Great. Woo! Everything's good. Yeah, forget about God. Okay, got to get your attention again. Oh no, everything's bad. God, come help us. It's always that bit. We turn to God after he has to sort of wake us up again. Because when everything's good and we're getting everything we want, God, that's okay. When have you most depended on God? When everything went right? All of you have played sports. Unfortunately, yesterday, Georgia Tech did not beat Georgia. I was driving to Nashville, and I had one person who I knew that she'd gone to Georgia. She's texted me, "Ha, we're ahead," and I'm going through, and I'm driving. I can't scream. I can't jump up and down. I can't yell. It's like, okay. They never got that close to beating Georgia when I was in school there, but, I'll take what I can. Bama beat Auburn, so there is a God. All right, so that's it. Now, for you Aggie fans, I know you're in pain. Okay, we'll go through. But the catch is, if you were in sports, when you won the championship, you didn't learn anything. You celebrated. When you came in dead last and got your head handed to you on a platter, that's when you learned, wasn't it? That's when you said, good grief, what do I have to do to win next time? That's human nature. So during this holiday season, I'd like us to think about the following. Flip this over. Hold on. Why was Jesus sent to this earth? Why did he need to save the world? Why couldn't we do it? Because we're powerless. Right? We can't do it. We can't do it. We have no power. God sent Christ, and who raised him? The wealthy? The educated? The religious leaders? The poor, who were powerless. Regardless of who you voted for in the last presidential election, I'm a statistician, so, I was looking at the data. Trump extended his vote tallies in every category, including Democrats that voted for it. And the data shows that many of those Democrats who'd voted for Trump did so because they were working class and inflation had hit them so hard. In other words, as some of the interviews with him said, we're hurting. Just needed somebody to do something to try and help. Okay? Now, again, I don't know your political affiliations. That's not the point I'm trying to make. I'm trying to make that even today, in the richest nation on earth, the working class are going, I need help. Joseph and Mary, the poor in the United States, have it much better than Joseph and Mary did. Okay? The only reason Joseph and Mary could run when Herod was trying to kill everybody was they had gifts from the Magi. None of their own resources. They had to take it from somebody else who had given them something and get out of town. Okay? Who were the first people to be told about Christ's arrival? The shepherds. Another group, totally powerless. Okay? There's a point to be made there. Why that? Because the powerless will listen. Herod was sitting there going, oh, I may have some competition. I'm powerful. I will have everybody slaughtered. He was trying to control the situation. Just like we do. Right? Just like we do. Come, yeah, go ahead. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because he has power over your life, no matter what you're power.
Mm-hmm.
Hanging on to power is something that a regime like his, they have to be brutal.
It's time that, especially for people listening along, he said, in North Korea, Kim Jong-un is viewed as a god by the people. And it's a function of trying to keep power, trying to keep that control. And you're right, historically speaking, power is very difficult to give up. You've heard the phrase, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And in fact, when George Washington refused to run for president a third time, well, actually, even before that, the Continental Army had not been paid, and so they were going to revolt and make George Washington king. And Washington refused. And in fact, the way he put it down is he heard about it, and all the officers were gathered together, and Washington had always been very circumspect and trying to be the good leader to show nothing fazed him or anything like that. And so he came out to the officers there, and he was going to read them a statement he made, but he pulled out his glasses. No one knew he used glasses. He purposely pulled them out, and everybody's like, what? Wait a minute, you have this weakness? And he said, I have sacrificed my eyesight in service to my country. And all his officers are just bawling, and he's like, I will not be king. We did not go through all this stuff, etc. When the king of France heard this, he said it had to be a lie, because no one would give up power. And when he was assured that it actually happened, he said, if this is true, because he still didn't believe it, then Washington is the greatest man of his age, because he gave up power. We don't want to give up power. Christ gave up supreme power. He came here. To me, that is still the thing I cannot comprehend. In the midst of all that pain, on the cross, the humiliation, all Christ had to do was let his guard down for a nanosecond and go, nah, I'm done. And the angels appeared, and everybody's toast. I have no concept of that type of trust in God. It's possible. I've told you the story of a former student of mine who's now a good friend, that he was Delta Force commander. If you see the movie Black Hawk Down, that's him and his Delta Force team. And that night, in the scenes where they're doing the helicopter gun runs, because they're trying to keep the thousands of people back in bay, and he's talking about he's on the top of that roof, and he said, I was afraid. He figured I was going to die. He said, I wasn't worried about me dying, but I was afraid for my men. But there was nothing we could do. And he said, just for a moment, the smoke clears, and I could see up, and I saw the stars, and it dawned on me, God's in control. What's going to happen, happens. And I rolled over and went to sleep. And I said, you did what? He said, I rolled over and went to sleep. In the middle of these gun runs and everything, he says, there was nothing else to do. And I'm going, I don't have that level of trust. okay? But the point is, how did he get that level of trust? By being put in life and death situations again and again and again. So I ask you during this holiday season to think about what you don't have and what you can't get done, to remind us that that's what God is for. Romans 8:26. Likewise, the Spirit helps us. Helps us what? In our weakness. For we do not know what to pray for as we ought to, but the Spirit Himself intercedes for us with groanings too deep for words to inform God what we need. 1 Corinthians, for the foolishness of God is wiser than men. The weakness of God is stronger than men. 1 Corinthians 2:3. When I was with you in weakness, in fear, and much trembling. I point that out because just like George Washington showed his weakness to his men, it's the holiday season. That can be a very difficult time for a lot of people. That can be a very difficult time for some of you. And it's okay to tell people that. If you're having a difficult time, it's okay. That's what we are all here for. Because at some point in time, all of us will have a difficult time over a holiday. All of us will have a difficult time. My wife and I suffered, well, I should say, she suffered, but 3 miscarriages. And she didn't want to tell anybody. I finally got her to open up and tell her group, and you ladies know the answer to this already. As soon as she was open with that, suddenly, women are coming. I said, I did too. But if we keep it by ourselves, then we're weak by ourselves. But that's what the church is here for as well. First Corinthians 15:43, faith is sown in dishonor, it is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness, and it is raised in power. Just like that Delta Force commander, by being in situations where he's forced to face death and be weak, is what strengthened his faith. And in 2 Corinthians, Paul says, if I must boast, I will boast on the things that show my weakness. That's not an American thing to do. How many of you during your corporate careers ever walked into a meeting where a senior person said, we've had a problem? And somebody said, I did it. I just like to take responsibility for this and let everybody know so it doesn't happen again and everybody can learn from my mistakes. Anybody in an American company ever see that? No, that's not what we do in America. That's not what we do. 2 Corinthians 12:9. As Paul keeps praying, take away this thorn in my flesh. But God said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect when you are strong and win the championships. Oh no, that's not what it says. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect when you get to talk about me on the podcast. No, that's not what it says. My grace is sufficient for you when my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly of my weakness, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Because remember, Christ was crucified in weakness, but lives by the power of God. For we also are weak in Him, but in dealing with you, we will live with Him by the power of God. It is still true today. I'm a business professor, so yes, we read the Wall Street Journal every day. All right? So it's going through. This is an article that came out yesterday morning. Sales of Bibles are booming, fueled by first-time buyers responding to rising anxiety. Opening line of the article, hallelujah, Bibles are a bright spot in books this year. Okay? Worries about the economy, conflicts abroad, uncertainty over the election, and other anxieties have pushed readers towards purchasing the Bible in droves. Bible sales are up 22% in the U.S. through the year into October. By contrast, total U.S. print book sales were up less than 1% this past year. Let me throw it down here. There's some of the stuff they said. People are experiencing anxiety themselves, or they're worried for their children or their grandchildren. It's related to all sorts of things: AI, electric cycles, and all this feeds a desire for assurance that we're going to be okay. Celie Vasquez, who is a 28-year-old artist and influencer who was recently on the reality TV show Love Island USA. I've never seen Love Island, but I know something about it. And she recently had a TikTok because she recently bought her first Bible. I think if you were on Love Island, you probably need to buy a Bible, from what I've heard. Okay. And she did this talk today and says, I felt I needed my own Bible to start my own journey, that it symbolized I needed to start a walk with God. I felt something was missing. It's a combination of where we are in the world, our general anxiety, and the sense that meaning and comfort can be found in the Bible. I think I should start with one of the Gospels. What do you recommend? I'll take it. I'll take it. I have no idea who this person is, but if she's a TikTok influencer, your children or grandchildren are probably looking at it. And it's like, okay, go. Here's the data to show this. Right now, in America, because we talked about as standard of living goes up, fewer people go to church. Right now, the Pew Research Center has found that 28% of adults in the U.S. now consider themselves religiously unaffiliated, right? And so we'd be, oh no, that's bad. And yet, with the difficult times, here's what's happened. Bible sales rose to 14.2 million in 2023. In 2019, it was only 9.7 million. And this year, just in the first 10 months, it's already been 13.7 million. So we're going to beat last year's record. People are turning to the Bible because the economy is great and inflation is nowhere around and nobody is worried about anything. No, because they're worried, reminding themselves that they aren't in control. So I'd like to leave you with this. When's the last time you weren't in control and powerless? Was it COVID? Was it a sickness? I don't know, but what was it? In my prayer for all of us this holiday season, I know this is going to sound weird, but I pray for all of us, myself included, that we don't get everything we want under the Christmas tree. That everything doesn't go perfectly according to plan. That things mess up. That the tree isn't perfect. That the food gets burned. Oh, okay. Well, maybe not that far. Okay. That somebody gets, all the things that bad happen, to remind us of something. My dad was the toughest guy I know. And as I've told y'all before, I didn't know what he was until I was an adult and then find out, you're a spy? What? You're going through all this? And Dad was strong and he was independent. And at 86 years old, after he had a stroke and he was having Parkinson's and we had to move him into assisted living, I'm moving stuff around, and his bedside table I find a .357 Magnum with Magnum rounds. And I'm like, and I walk in, I'm like, Dad, you got your .357 by the bedside table? And he looks at me with that, that look, the spy look that says, that's right, and that's exactly where it's going to stay. And I'm going, yeah, and he had that look of, this is not open for discussion. I'm like, yes, sir. So I left the .357 and took all the rounds, okay? Because an 86-year-old with Parkinson's does not need a .357, especially when they're on the 12th floor of a retirement community, okay? But he wanted to still, all of us, as we get older, what do we want to do? We still want to feel in control. And yet one of the things Dad told me is he's getting older and weaker, and he died just shy of 90. And after he'd had a stroke, and then he had a heart attack, and when he got him out of the hospital, I said, Dad, you're not going to make it to 100. And he goes, yeah, I'll take 90. And I said, he's back. There you go. But the point he's saying is that he said, son, it's a good thing. And I'm like, what do you mean, Dad? He says, as we get older, we get weaker. And we got to rely on people. He said, I got to rely on you to help me get in the car. I got to rely on your sister to take me to my doctor's appointments. I have to rely on other people. He says, do you know what it just reminds me of? I said, what, Dad? He said, that soon, I don't know when, but I'm going to have to rely on God because it's just going to be me and him. It doesn't matter if all y'all around the bed when I'm dying. At some point in time, it's just going to be me and him. I'm like, good point. So I'd like to point out to you, I realize none of us here are old. All right? But as we get older and weaker, that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. Because it helps us get rid of all that baggage we've built up in an American society where we've been in control and we've been in charge and we made the decisions and we paid the bills and all that to remind us this bill can't be paid by us. The bill has been paid by God, and we've got to rely on him. He's the only one in control, not us. So I hope you have a great holiday, but I hope you don't get everything you want. Okay? So, I'm going to be upfront to you so y'all can pray for me. I'm not going to church. Okay? Because I haven't slept since Friday. And if I go to church and sit down, I will start snoring. And Ryan and you don't want that because, I've never heard myself snore, but my children tell me it's horrific. Okay? So I don't want to disturb services. So I'm just telling you that up front. I'm not neglecting the assembly of the saints. But I haven't slept since Friday. And so I'm going home and going to bed. Okay? But y'all have a great worship service and spend that time with God. Okay?